Коротко представлю. Карли Шмит, стипендиат моего года, поэтому человек морально-духовно ужасно близкий. Художник, который преобразует публичное пространство. Работает одновременно и в США, это ее родина, и в Германии, где она сейчас живет. И мы увидим рассказ о некоторых ее проектах.
What role does art play in society? Which role do artists play within our urban environment? Who has access to their work? Does their artwork have a function? How are they used? And to what end?
Как используется искусство в публичном пространстве?
Ask the same set of questions to different people coming from different cultures, and I imagine you'll hear very different answers. These questions are very complex, and the answers are even more complex. Oftentimes they involve the simultaneous explanation of historic and cultural events in order to provide some context for why that is. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Community art. In the United States, community art is a term that most people are familiar with. Art that takes place within a specific community, designed for a specific local audience.
Итак, что такое искусство в публичном пространстве? На этот вопрос можно задавать самые разные вопросы. У меня вопрос, в принципе, еще перевод нужен, может быть, мы так все поймем? Поймем? Хорошо. Тогда давайте мы просто кино посмотрим. Если что-то непонятно, вы меня...
Is created to address a social problem and often involves or invites the participation of people who identify within the community. Now, I have lived in Germany the past 10 years, and I still can't find a good translation for this term. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't really exist. Gemeindekunst? Doesn't really fit, and it suggests something else. This is not to say that people aren't working on participatory projects within German communities or urban development projects that involve art materials, but they're rarely labeled as artworks. Instead, these projects go by the different names, such as cultural projects, social projects, experimental or participatory architecture projects. But regardless of how you label them, they all strive to do the same thing, use creativity as a catalyst to address urban change in a hands-on manner and bring citizens closer together. This is a textbook example of what community art looks like in the United States. This is the Gateway Mural Project. It's a project I conceived and conducted in collaboration with another artist, Sarah Udvig, in 2012. We were approached with the challenge of creating a 10-meter-long mural along a concrete retaining wall that goes under a railroad bridge. This underpass connects two adjoining neighborhoods. What we found out through a series of community workshops was that there was a lot of tension in this neighborhood. Tension between the young, fluctuating student population and the longtime residents who are now entering retirement age. We saw the opportunity as a chance to pull these two groups of community members together and give them a reason to start working side by side in hopes that it would lead to new relationships and more open communication. To do so, we designed the mural to be a huge paint-by-number, allowing community members of all ages pick up a paintbrush and work hands-on to redevelop the image of their community. Another really exciting example of this is the Grand Hotel Cosmopolis in Augsburg, which is both an art hotel and a home for refugees, where these two populations literally sleep and eat side by side. They define themselves as ein soziale Plastik oder gesellschaftliches Gesamtkunstwerk, thus borrowing directly off of Joseph Beuys' concept of a social sculpture, which is a term he created to describe creative works that involve human activity and strive to reshape some aspect of our environment. He believed that art has the tremendous potential to transform society, and this project is a great example of that. Now, as you can see from these two very different examples, art and creative thinking is being used in contemporary communities to address challenges head-on, oftentimes casting artists in a variety of roles and more integrated positions. An exciting trend that I'm seeing here in both Germany and the United States is that government agencies and companies are starting to reach out to artists for input in their process and to aid in public relations. An example of this: in my hometown, St. Paul, Minnesota, they initiated a unique program in 2005 called the City Artist Program. This is a very innovative public-private partnership in which the City of St. Paul has hired and integrated an artist within the workings of the city. Here are a couple of examples of the projects coming out of this collaboration. In 2008, artist Marcus Young initiated the project Everyday Poems for City Sidewalks. Since then, the city of St. Paul has stamped more than 1,000 poems from a collection that now includes 54 individual pieces, all written by St. Paul residents, into city sidewalks. This project aspires to pave all of St. Paul sidewalks with poems and to claim poetry as an essential city service. In Minnesota, these projects are labeled as examples of creative placemaking. Creative placemaking projects can be defined as projects that leverage the power of the arts, culture, and creative thinkers to serve a community's interests, encourage the growth of character, and ultimately contribute to a higher quality of life. In 2015, city artist Amanda Lovely began exploring civil and social engagement. The outcome of this is her project titled Pop-Up Meeting. For this project, she retrofitted City Truck to become the basic infrastructure for a spontaneous city meeting. In this case, community members are given delicious locally made popsicles in exchange for their thoughts, survey results, or a handwritten love letter to the city. Through playful engagement, Pop-Up Meeting brings the city to the people and creatively invites residents to share their perspective. The majority of the art projects that I have created while living in Germany over the past 11 years also fall along these lines. Here are a few examples of my work. Samenbank, or Seed Bank as it would be translated into English. This was a 2-week temporary artistic intervention that I conducted on the market square in Kalkar. I used this 1970s camping wagon and transformed it into the headquarters for a new type of bank that was designed to invest specifically in the surrounding community. My bank, however, did not deal in euros. It was only interested in the deposit and withdrawal of plant seeds. Participants were invited to deposit or withdraw seeds from the bank, which of course also involved filling out all the appropriate paperwork. However, there was one small catch. The people depositing the seeds were able to specify how the seeds should be used. So, for example, someone deposited tomato seeds with the attached condition that half of the fruit harvested from these seeds must be shared with neighbors. Through this process, the Samenbank was not just concerned with the redistribution of seeds, but planting seeds of community involvement that had the potential to germinate and create other creative projects within the community. I have also had the privilege of collaborating with 2 different government agencies in Germany, and specifically designing art projects that were helping them to write new mission statements. For the Kultureindruck project, taking place in 2013 in Landshut, I developed a mobile poster printing wagon that was designed to invite citizens to help develop new mottos for the city of Landshut's Kulturamt. To do this, I would go to various happenings, neighborhood parties, school events, and invite open participation. There was always someone from the Department of Culture at these events, and they were able to engage participants in a more direct conversation. The new city mottos were collected and used to help brainstorm about what the future role of this organization should be. This was a fun and engaging way to involve citizens directly in the development of a new mission statement for the Landshuter Kulturamt. Last year in Ulm, I was once again hired by the cultural organization Han 15 to help a government agency conduct research for their new mission statement. This time I was working for the international city of Ulm, and I came up with the project titled International Personal Ad. This project was playing with the familiar format of writing a personal ad that you would perhaps post on a bulletin board or publish in a newspaper. To conduct this project, we set up a stand, made a world map, built a website, and printed out cards that people could use to write down their international personal ads. Participants were asked the question, "What are you looking for or missing in the international landscape of the city of Ulm?" and asked to use the ad cards as a platform to record their answers to these questions. The cards were put on display, and we conducted the free service of matching people through this platform. For example, lots of people were looking for language tandem partners. We connected a lot of people who wanted to learn and practice new languages. Other people were looking to learn about Turkish food or traditional Chinese music, for example. and through this project we were able to connect those people as well. Moreover, each of these international personal ads was able to give the international city of Ulm direct feedback about their programming and start to innovate about how they could create programs for the future that also addressed some of these areas. And the most exciting part of the project was that in the end, we had over 500 people submit ads during the course of this 4-week project. That means that 500 people submitted their thoughts and gave input into the new mission statement for the international city, which, as the government agency pointed out to me, this is a lot more than the same 10 people we normally have attending our standard community meetings. During this presentation, I have given you many different examples of how art, participation, and creative thinking can greatly impact a community's ownership, enthusiasm, civic engagement, and quality of life. From my perspective, this is a very exciting time to be an artist, because I see that the role of artist is changing within our society. Artists are now being appreciated and called upon as creative problem solvers and idea generators, being given specific roles in companies and being asked to sit in on city meetings. This is exactly the kind of synergy and creative problem solving that we will need to help solve the wicked problems of our time. We as a society have become more isolated, and this type of work attempts to comment and in some cases improve this situation by creating spaces and structures that bring people closer together and encourage more meaningful conversations.
Мне кажется, это было ужасно интересно. Я не знаю, как вам понравилось, но мне показалось, что это настолько близко к тому, что мы обсуждаем, как раз и способы создания сообществ, и инструменты разные. Colleagues, it's absolutely a fantastic video. Thank you so very much. It's so much in line with what we were discussing all these days, with this engagement, the isolation as a problem, lack of information, and the creative manner how you could extract this information, like in your last example about stimulating this your needs about an international presence in the city. Just brilliant. Thank you so very much. У меня вопрос к аудитории. У нас, может быть, есть вопросы к Карли, которые мы хотели задать? So I will start with the first question. The people. Yeah? Давайте.
Можете, наш уважаемый автор, посоветовать, что делать в России, когда здесь наступает зима?
Мне кажется, у нее похожий климат. Could you give some practical advice for the people living in a continental climate when we have winter? Is it restricting circumstance for artists to work outside, or is it not? How do you deal with winter times?
That's a very good question, and had I thought about that question, I could have sent you some great visuals. The city that I talked a lot about, St. Paul, Minnesota, it is probably one of the coldest cities in the United States, and we have about 6 months of winter there, and it's pretty serious winter.
Если бы я заранее об этом знала, я бы тогда вам соответствующие слайды подобрала. Город Сент-Пол, о котором она много говорила в своих презентациях, пожалуй, один из самых холодных городов в Соединенных Штатах. Их полгода зима.
But something I did want to say is one very imaginative project is in Minnesota, people fish in ice houses in the winter. And every year they've now created a temporary artist community on a lake where each of these little houses is a art project, a participatory art project. And so instead of going out on the lake to fish, you can go out to visit different art happenings.
Почему не Аляска самая холодная? Нет, если считают, что это почему Миннесота самая холодная?
Но один из, я не сказал, что самый холодный, один из там континентальный, все-таки Аляска ближе к морю. Можно я вернусь к ее ответу? There was a reactive question in the audience why Alaska is not as cold as St. Paul, for example. But I assume there is also continental climate which influences St. Paul situation. And besides, half a year winter sounds good already. Но пример, который Карли рассказывала про то, что они делают зимой, это что на льду озера они строят домики изо льда, и это уже тоже как бы совместное творчество, как они его строят, как они эти домики используют. Тут они рыбу ловят, в этом, я не знаю, там еще что-нибудь делают. So coming back to your example with a lake and ice houses.
Yeah, but it also makes summer that much better, because then you can save up your creative energy for an explosion of culture within the 3 months of summer.
И, конечно, длинная зима позволяет нам накопить энергию и особенно радоваться лету, когда оно наконец приходит, когда в эти 3 коротких месяца происходит творческий взрыв, потому что все настолько рады наступлению тепла.
One last thought. Working in public space doesn't necessarily mean working outside as well. Oftentimes it's taking art happening to a space where many people are gathered, but it could be a hockey game, for example. You're inside an arena, but it's still a public space. That would be another example of how you could use that.
Работа в общественном пространстве не обязательно подразумевает работу на улице, поэтому вполне можно проводить, допустим, какое-нибудь спортивное мероприятие, такое какое-то художественное событие, например, хоккейный матч, да, арена, все закрыто, зрителям не холодно, но там собирается большое число народу, и можно использовать такую встречу как площадку. I also have a question about sustainability. So do you try to engage the communities to have them long-lasting, like in your example of making this big mural which was supposed to bring together the students, the younger people and the older people? Do you try to make like regular invasions so to keep the community, to stimulate this interaction in the community, or you just make it once and then allow it to be there? How do you proceed with that?
That's a great question, Svetlana, because that's, I think, actually maybe the most challenging thing about working this way. Oftentimes artists are sort of dropped into a community, and then they work a year or maybe 2 years developing a very intricate community network. But then what happens at the end of the project, right? Once the artist disappears, is this network gone? So something that I've recently done, which has become very effective. I'm sorry, did you want to translate or should I?
Yeah, I could translate. Thank you. I also got involved and forgot about the need to translate. Я спросила вопрос, с которым мы тоже сталкиваемся все время эти дни, как обеспечить преемственность работы сообщества. То есть мы все время сталкиваемся, что есть какой-то импульс сильный, который что-то в сообществе преображает, но уходит инициатор импульса, что происходит с сообществом дальше. И Карли говорит, что да, это одно из самых уязвимых моментов, это очень сложно. Год или 2, допустим, сообщество работает над каким-то арт-проектом, все вовлечены, все интересно, ушел художник, что происходит дальше. Для нее это тоже самая узкая тема, и вот она нашла для себя в настоящий момент путь, который представляется наиболее эффективным.
And so what I've started doing is working more as a consultant on community art projects as opposed to the major maker in a project, if that makes sense. So what I do is I will go into a community, I already understand the structures and what needs to happen to achieve the artwork or whatever the collaborative effort is. But instead of me personally going and conducting events or working to build a network in the community, I advise people that live in the community and that are going to stay in the community, how they can do that, just with my experience and knowledge. And then they do it hands-on so that the work that's created with this network and the excitement of getting to know your neighbors still remains in the community and is still active once I disappear.
Происходит изменение ролей, которое может быть тоже интересной моделью для нас. То есть если раньше Карли считала, что я художник, я прихожу и делаю всю эту работу, теперь она накопила опыт по тому, как это можно делать, как можно таким образом преобразовывать пространство, и что она делает. Она теперь выступает часто как консультант. То есть она представляет, как можно такую работу организовать, но тогда ответственность за работу и результаты, и, как сказать, вовлеченность в выстраивание всего процесса, и таким образом, и, как сказать, последовательность, что ли, вся, остается в руках сообщества. Не то, что пришел внешний человек, что-то предложил, ушел, все закончилось, а она таким образом как бы создает основания, и сообщество само отвечает и за разработку, и за реализацию, за последующую поддержку. То есть вся инициатива и весь проект в руках не художника, который пришел откуда-то извне, а внутри самого сообщества. И это дает совершенно другой импульс самого сообщества. Sounds like a good recipe. And do you have already examples with that? How did it work, or did it work already?
Yeah, I do have a project that there was a couple slides in my video. It looked like a mosaic work, and if you got up close to the tiles, there were individual names or images on the tiles. And that's a project I've recreated in different communities. And each time I've become less of an active member in the actual community outreach and more of a consultant. And I think every time I've done that, it's become more successful as a way of building community and a strong community network for the arts.
Конкретный пример. Мы в видеоролике видели часто эпизоды, как кто-то выкладывает плитку. Если присмотреться внимательно на эту такую мозаику, да, если присмотреться внимательно, на каждом кусочке этой мозаики, который примерно размером с обычную кафельную плитку, есть что-то личное, там, может быть имя, может быть какие-то картинки. То есть каждый человек изготовляет такую плитку сам. И Карли этот проект реализовывал в нескольких городах, и с каждым разом все больше и больше отдалялась от этого, собственно, как художник, и больше выстраивалась как организатор. И она замечает, что с каждым этим шагом, ее отступанием вглубь и передаванием инициативы в руки людей, в руки сообществ, гораздо больше оказывается и ответственности, привязанность к этому, и сообщество лучше держится вместе и крепче остается после окончания проекта. То есть оно становится в большей степени сообществом по завершению проекта. Sounds really great. Есть еще какие-то вопросы с нашей стороны? Everybody got too exhausted, I guess.
No, I totally understand. Thank you so much for taking so much time for me to be able to share my ideas and some of my work with you. Thank you for your translation as well. It's been an honor to join you today.
It's our great pleasure to have you with us, and I assume you cannot really imagine how much in tune it was with all the discussion, and it's really a fantastic new view, new look on what could be done and the new tools we could utilize in trying to make our cities better. So thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.